Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Gatekeepers. I'm Bishop Vanessa M. Brown, and I'm excited to have you here with us on Beyond the Gatekeepers tonight, where we are talking about current events, books, authors, but we are coming from a theological and justice-informed lens. We're excited to have you here with us on tonight. To all my Facebook family, all of my YouTube family, Instagram, uh, LinkedIn, X, everywhere where we are shown tonight. We say welcome, welcome, welcome. And we are still celebrating for the month of May. This is our last Wednesday celebrating our 4th-year anniversary. Thank you for many who have came in and already told us happy anniversary, happy 4th year. We started this in the pandemic, and we are so excited. Actually, it was April like 29th or something. So we were still in April, but it was like at the very end of the month when we started Beyond the Gatekeepers. We're so happy to still be standing at the intersection of culture and religion. And so we're so very happy to have you as our guest every week. Every week we're happy, and we want to shout you out tonight. We want you all to do us a big favor, begin to share and let folks know that we've got an incredible conversation that's about to take place. And we want you to be a part of that conversation tonight. We want to hear from you. And so I am going to start with shouting people out on YouTube. We have Ingrid on here. I believe that is our guest mother. I just love it when parents support their children. It's so wonderful. So y'all do me a favor. Make sure y'all tell me where you're watching from. So those of you that know, make sure you put down that I'm watching from DC, I'm watching from wherever, right? So we have Chuck Hunt here with us, Monroe, Louisiana. Reginald Nichols is here he's the graduate. Congratulations, Reginald. Stockton, California is in the house. Lavinia Bean, Kate May, New Jersey. Welcome, 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 welcome you all. Let's see. Jessica C. Lovell. God bless you, Jessica. Thank you for being with us tonight. Jessica, tell us where you're from. Maria Harris is on YouTube as well. Denver, Colorado. Rebecca is here from Phoenix, Arizona. I love it. Bishop Diana Williams is here from Maryland. Good evening, Your Grace. So good to see you on with us. Joyce Rouse is here with us from North Carolina. Thank you for being with us, Joyce. She's on YouTube tonight. Jessica says she's a student of our guest tonight, St. Paul in Kansas City. God bless you. Watching from Zebulon, North Carolina, Mrs. Sky. Thank you for being here with us. Bishop Sonia Williams is here tonight. Glad that you're here. Atlanta, Georgia is in the house. Bishop Ernest Leon Moore Jr., thank you for being here. Richmond, Virginia is in the house. Thank you so much. Charlene Jones is watching from North Carolina. I love it. Celeste is from Zebulon, North Carolina. Thank you so much. Y'all keep sharing and letting folks know that we're about to start this conversation. Natasha Robinson is here. Professor Natasha Robinson is here, representing Chi-Town. Illinois is in the house. We have Marlene McLaurin here from Baltimore. She's representing the Unity Fellowship Church movement. Love you and thank you for being on with us tonight. And y'all are just keep letting me know what's going on and who's out here. We're so glad to see you. I wanted to make an announcement to let you all know that we want to extend condolences to Lynette Hawkins Stevens. And many of you may not know who Lynette Hawkins Stevens is, but many of you do. She's a Hawkins singer and has been singing with the Hawkins pretty much her whole life. Anyway, her husband passed away not that long ago, just a few minutes ago. His name is Reginald Stevens. And so we want everyone to keep the family in prayer. Keep Mother Shirley Miller, for those of you that are just visiting, you may not know, is the spouse of Bishop Flunder. And so please keep her in prayer. She's heartbroken on tonight. And so Bishop is not going to be with us for that reason. and that reason alone. And so we want you all to continue to keep the Hawkins family and the Stevens family in your prayers on tonight. Yes, please send your love to them. Please send your condolences to them. Yes, God bless you, Reverend Java. Good to see you tonight. Tell me where you're from, Reverend Java. Where you representing? Desiree Frierson, I believe you're from California, Oakland, if I'm not mistaken. Welcome, 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 everybody. Thank you for showing up on tonight. We appreciate your presence. We know that you can be someplace else. Darlene Connor was here from Queens, New York. We say welcome to you, Lucretia Lofton from North Carolina. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Oh, Dr. Elise Salisbury, God bless you tonight. Thank you for being here with us. Dr. Elise, I believe you're in Tennessee, but confirm that for me. Yes, Reverend Java, New York, UCC. I know that I believe that I always remember where people are from, but I want you to say it for yourself. Yes, classes in session, Colette Walker. Thank you for being a studious pupil, always with us on a weekly basis. St. Louis is in the house. Thank you so much, Colette. Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you so much, Dr. Elise. Chuck Hunt is here. Thank you for being with us on tonight, Chuck Hunt. We appreciate you. Kim Good is here from the Bronx, New York. Thank you for being here, Kim Good, with us on tonight. We appreciate your presence. Reverend Dr. Joshua Lawrence is in here. London, Ontario, United Church of Christ of Canada. He's on IG. Yes, we're loving it. I love that the people are showing up everywhere. Yes, Dr. Lewis is here from Sacramento, California. Carolyn Morgan is here from ELC, Empowerment Liberation Cathedral, Maryland. Thank you. Kim Good is in Staten Island. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Daly James is here. Nashville, Tennessee is in the house. Listen, we're covering all the areas. I love it when it goes down like this. I don't want to delay the time any longer than I have to. Thank you. I will continue to shout people out as I see your name. And Desiree is from Kansas City. Yes. Member of City of Refuge in Oakland. God bless you. Thank you so much. I want to bring on our guest tonight. Let me bring on our guest tonight. He is a brilliant man and wrote an incredible book that I have fallen in love with. And so please let us give a warm welcome, as we know we can, to Joshua S. Bartholomew, Ph.D. Dr. Joshua is an assistant professor of ethics, church, and society at St. Paul's School of Theology. Oh, come on, Dr. Bartholomew. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Please greet our online audience.
Well, first, thank you, Bishop Brown, for that wonderful introduction. I love the energy in here. Hello, everybody. Thank you all for showing your support and being here with us tonight. It really means a lot that you are present for this conversation. And I'm just excited to be here and I feel very honored. Thank you.
Joshua, I'm going to blow up the spot. Your mama on the phone. Your mama here on YouTube. You got to shout out your mama.
What's up, mama? How you doing? Great to see you here. I love that you put in the chat that I'm your son. But I love you, Mom, and thank you for being here. Thank you for your support.
I just love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Lawan, thank you for being here with us on tonight. We appreciate your presence. Viva Las Vegas is in the house. CB Lofton is here from Kansas City, Missouri on IG. So people are coming in. And this is my friend. He's up here. Brick City is in the house. Newark. Julio Caesar Roman III is in here. He's got a great book. He was on the show before, and we so appreciate your presence, Julio. Thank you so much. So you wrote this book, Dr. Joshua. It's an incredible book, Black Theology and the Black Panthers, y'all. Black Theology and the Black Panthers. So let me just say a few things before we get into our conversation. First of all, we want you to support this book. And Pastor Sue is already putting down in the chat how you can get this book, get access to this book. You want this book. You want this book not just in your library, but you want this book to be in conversation with people, because this is a right now book. This is a such a time as this kind of book. And so we want you to have this book. It's here. We tell you all the ways that you can get the book on tonight. I see you, Elder Boaz. God bless you from Philadelphia. Listen, we want you to get the book, but you already know what it is. Dr. Joshua has consented to give a book away. And so this is going to be a free book giveaway. You have to put hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers, just the way you see it on the screen. That's what we're going to need you to do if you want to win the book. So we're going to say that a couple of times throughout the evening, but we're also going to go on with this conversation. So Dr. Joshua, tell me this, my first question to you, and then I've got it broken down into the chapters of your book as well.
Okay.
But my first question to you is, why did you write this book? Something, I believe the Spirit of the Lord hit you, but I believe something else had to come to you as well to tell you to write this book.
Yeah. I really appreciate that question. When I hear it, so many thoughts flood to my mind because I get excited. I wrote this book because I'm extremely passionate about Black theology, right? Black theology, when I first learned about it, it activated an interest inside of me that I didn't fully understand. And that was because I had been searching for so many years for language to kind of understand some of my passions at the intersection of, faith and racial justice. It wasn't until I heard about Black theology that I sort of found a context that sort of fit my passions. And so I pursued, academic research. I first studied with Dr. James Cone. And a lot of what I learned in that experience was, I had a particular way of looking at racial justice and solutions to racial justice that I didn't feel a lot of people at the time I was doing my research were talking about. And then as I began to discover more about, this field of religious and theological studies, I actually understood very quickly nobody had done a lot of research at the intersection of racial justice, racial equality and economic justice.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a light bulb went off, right? I looked more deeply into Dr. Cone's first book, Black Theology and Black Power. And I understood, or I began to understand, that Black Power was an economic self-determination movement. And nobody had really written about that in the field of religious and theological studies. Even Dr. Cone himself kind of went in a systematic theology direction and continued to develop, and thank God he did, right? He continued to develop Black theological discourse. But, I had this sort of splinter in my mind around economics and the role that capitalism played in racial injustice. And I figured that because the conversation started, in the context of the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, and given that much of that research was left sort of theologically underdeveloped, I figured, well, this could be my opportunity to not only fulfill a lot of the things that I had been interested in researching to begin with, economic justice and so on, but make a connection that I didn't really feel was being made, a very understated or underrated connection between Black Power and economic justice. So that sort of became my platform to enter into the discourse of Black theology. And my entire life sort of culminated in what I began to experience as a sort of, cathartic expression, right? As I'm writing this book, kind of, digging deep into myself and my experiences that kind of brought me to the conversation. So much of what led me to write the book was just my own personal passion, my own personal experiences, a lot of the burning questions and big questions I had around racial equality, racial justice, and the role that, I always felt capitalism played in it. I felt that this was my opportunity to kind of, contribute to the conversation, but also say something new and something that was really feeding my soul and had been sort of, at the front of my mind for a long time. I just didn't understand, how to put it together in an academic setting.
So essentially what you're saying to us, in the words of Katie Geneva Cannon, is that you were doing the work your soul must have.
Exactly. In
I
so
love
many
that.
words, that's 1000% what I did. And you know, thank God for my PhD advisors, Dr. Miguel de la Torre, Dr. Jennifer Leith. You know, these were individuals who really allowed me to lean in to this project.
They've all been guests on this show as well.
Oh, okay. I love
Yes.
that. I love that. I owe so much of my intellectual and academic development to those individuals, particularly Dr. Jennifer Leith. Her perspective in helping me shape the conversation, which was originally my dissertation, it became this book. So you know, I'm forever indebted to those two intellectual giants for all that they poured into me in the process of writing my dissertation before it became the book.
I love it, and you bring us to the place where we need to be in this particular conversation, right? Because your first chapter, of course, obviously you have this introduction, but your first chapter, you start off with Black theology and modern economic thought.
Yes.
And you just said that you brought something new, and
Yes.
so I want you to be able to expound on and explain the newness and the modernness of this economic thought, because the reason why I want you to key in on it is because I believe it's something that we need to have as a people. It is something that's going to move us forward. And I think that there's a possibility that there can be a refreshing and a revival, so to speak, in people when they start to hear what you have to say.
Right. And I appreciate, thank you, Bishop Brown. You know, the first time I opened up about this project, I told Dr. de la Torre, you know, I'm interested in sort of examining that intersection or relationship between economic justice and racial equality. And one of the first thinkers he recommended to me was Dr. Eric Williams, who wrote the book Capitalism and Slavery. Now, serendipitously enough, Eric Williams is also from my home country. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, you know, and I didn't know that at the time. But when I read his book, I felt that there were answers to questions I had been asking my whole life, specifically around, you know, what is the sort of shape or structure of racism? And it's capitalism. Capitalism sort of helps to shape and structure how racism functions in society, right? And Eric Williams, he does a great job, and I believe this is what you're referring to in that chapter. You know, he does a great job of sort of laying out the ways in which the enslavement period in the Americas created a caste system that now becomes essential for the way capitalism exploits Black communities in particular, right?
Yes.
And you know, he talks specifically about how the enslavement system was first something fitted for Native Americans, right? And because that didn't work out, you know, Europeans were then contracted as indentured servants. That also didn't work out. So then a lot of the sort of, you know, bias that was budding in the imagination of Europeans, right, and Euro Christians in particular, became attached to the justification for why ethnic peoples from Africa could be deemed or seen as, you know, subhuman. Yes. And that was really a huge reason why ethnic peoples from Africa were then, you know, brought into the Americas and fitted into that system that was originally created for Native Americans and European indentured servants. Now, you know, obviously after slavery, racism becomes the consequence of this system, right?
Yes.
And that essentially creates a badge for Black people, right? That you know, either manual labor or some form of exploitation is essentially our trademark in a capitalist society. And so in looking at the role capitalism has played in shaping, you know, the function of really Black identity in a capitalist United States of America, I then began to see that understanding in and of itself becomes a huge linchpin in really trying to understand the problems with capitalism and how they shape the issues within Black communities. Some of that work had been done by Dr. Cone himself, by other womanists and so on, but really drawing out that connection such that we land, you know, as a sort of Black theological discussion in a place where we can firmly be anti-capitalist, or we can have reasons to critique capitalism and seek an alternative, was essentially why I needed that critique. That critique allowed me to uncouple from the minds of many who think about economic justice this need to think about capitalism as the answer, right? It helped me sort of create imaginative space to then entertain alternatives to capitalism, which then I talk about later on in my book, and try to use the Black Panther Party and their economic philosophies as a conversation partner.
This is so good. Listen, if you're just tuning in, I'm talking to Dr. Joshua S. Bartholomew, and he has a book called Black Theology and Black Panthers. Y'all, we have to get this book. You have to get it if you haven't received it yet. Pastor Sue just put it up so you can see what it looks like. You need to be ordering this book. You need to be having conversations. We're always talking about economic justice, racial equality. We're always talking about some of these things, but we need to hear this from a brother who has absolutely studied and delved into the length and the breadth of what this is really all about. You go to chapter 2 with us, Dr. Bartholomew, you start talking about the Panthers praxis. Now, from 67 to 71, let me just say this. When we talk about the Black Panthers, I've always known it as a good movement, but I've not always known it from the church. Right? As a good movement. Right? They kind of paint a little scarlet letter on the Black Panthers because, but what I've known about the Black Panthers is they were doing things that the church should have been doing. Right? So tell us about chapter 2.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So, you know, I set up the conversation in chapter 2 really to look at the Panthers in a different way. You know, typically we hear about the Panthers and they are romanticized, or, you know, their afros and their black beret. All these things are sensationalized. The guns and the black leather, all of that, right?
All of
and
it.
we never actually hear about what they did.
The work.
And we literally never consider them as intellectual economic resources, right?
Absolutely.
And to me, that was a big mistake. That to me, that was a big mistake in the way we study economic thought. And I'm just speaking generally. You know, when you go into the field of economic theory, the Panthers are not present, right? And to me, that's problematic, because when you look at how they applied their theories from those 4 years, 67 to 71, we had never seen something so effective in terms of actually bringing about racial justice, right? You know, as I mentioned, right, chapter 1 of the book really lays out an argument for why capitalism seeks to constantly exploit Black bodies. That's just what capitalism is going to do within our US context, right? Because again, of the enslavement period, racism is the consequence of slavery. And essentially we're stuck in a caste system because of that. Now, the Panthers found a way to create an alternative economic system within the capitalist system for those 4 years, from 1967 to 1971. And by that, I mean, you know, typically, you know, a capitalist relationship between, you know, an owner or somebody who's a laborer or somebody who's making a product. You know, if you're a worker, you don't own anything, right? Actually, your only job as the owner, excuse me, as the worker, is to give your time, right? And then in lieu of your time, you get a wage. You get a wage, but essentially it's the owner's job to collect income and have a surplus, right? I mean, the owner is there to get rich, right? But essentially, if you produce, you don't see what that ownership looks like for you, right? You just work for the owner. The Panthers problematized that relationship between worker and owner, right? So everybody who worked in their revolutionary services, and they had an array of services. I'm talking about the Free Breakfast for Children program.
Absolutely.
Sickle Cell Anemia Foundation, where they were doing healthcare modalities that today would put us to would put us to shame. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I mean, everything from renters aid, help with landlord, spousal abuse, free ambulance, free shoe programs, all types of programs, right? They were owning and controlling all of the resources of these programs, right? There
Yes.
was no alienation between those who owned the programs and those who were producing the goods in the programs in service of the community. You see,
They were the first for us by us. They was the first FUBU.
The first FUBU, right?
Oh yeah.
And that was revolutionary because for those 4 years, you could not exploit any Black community that was essentially being sponsored by the Black Panther Party. You see, all of the capital that would go into that community would be used for the community. You couldn't extract it and put it out and pull it out of the community, or exploit the people in the community for their labor and just give them, pennies on the dollar or meaningless wages. And then everybody else who's outside of the community, who might own the products and all these other things, and who owns the means of production, they're getting rich. No, that wasn't the system for the Panthers.
Right.
Those 4 years, we actually saw for the first time Black communities owning and controlling their destinies, right? And it was for only those 4 years, right? Because after 71, we began to see repression from the government and the FBI like we had never, ever seen before. I mean, never seen before. And it's well documented. I mean, this is not conspiracy theory stuff.
Right.
After the assassination of King, they had moved and the assassination of King happened a month to the day after J. Edgar Hoover, who was the director of the FBI at the time, said, and this is a famous quote, "We have to prevent the rise of a Black Messiah."
Yes.
Month to the day that he said that, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, and we saw a ramping up of the repressive apparatus in the United States towards Black nationalist groups and the Black Panthers in particular. They created SWAT teams, as a matter of fact, right? In order to raid Black Panther headquarters and assassinate their leaders. Fred Hampton was a victim of one of these raids, right? We have the movie Judas and the Black Messiah to sort of remember his legacy, right? But for those 4 years, it was so effective that they had to invent oppressions.
Yes.
Right. And that's why I focus on their praxis for those 4 years. We had never seen anything like it. And it was very hard to recreate that momentum because the FBI did a really good job of vilifying the Panthers. Nobody knew that that counterintelligence programs of the FBI existed. Nobody knew. It was all clandestine activity. We only found out 10 years after the assassination of Fred Hampton because a lot of people decided to raid FBI headquarters, and that's how they discovered COINTELPRO, right? So, I mean, it was sort of by accident, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it was hard to kind of recreate that momentum. And then on top of that, the government had given out many concessions, right? One of the reasons the Panthers were so effective in those 4 years, they had a lot of allies. You see, they had white allies, they had college students, people who were interested in anti-war and anti-draft. They had a new left collective that sort of backed them up. Fred Hampton in Chicago had the Rainbow Coalition with the Brown Berets, the Young Lords, the Young Patriots, the Chicano Red. So, I mean, they had allies who weren't just Black people, right? But as soon as the government did things like say, well, we're gonna pull troops from the Vietnam War, right? These types of concessions really deflated some of the momentum of the Panthers because then they lost some of their allies. And a lot of folk who were supporting them but didn't really understand their economic philosophies, they kind of fell off to the wayside, and it was really hard to kind of keep that momentum going.
So let me ask you this question really quickly. Where was the church?
And and I want to be honest, and I want to say, when you ask me that question, why did I write this book? That's partly why. I have great love for the church. And I think during the civil rights movement, what we saw was church praxis, Black pastor-led praxis, right? And it was interracial even. I mean, the civil rights movement was an interracial movement. And much of what culminates in that type of praxis became the Poor People's Campaign, right?
Yeah.
You know, Dr. King, towards the end of his career, many people, I don't actually talk about this side of Dr. King's career. You know, his public ministry culminates in the Poor People's Campaign because he actually began to understand economic justice was going to be the biggest key towards achieving racial equality. But after Dr. King was assassinated in Memphis, it's almost like we didn't carry that momentum around economic justice forward, right? And for good reason. You know, obviously the Black Panthers the Black Power movement eclipsed the civil rights movement. It was very difficult to keep the sort of nonviolent strategies, you know, given that they had killed King, right? And you know, Black people were getting fed. A lot of people were getting fed up. So so you know, you had a different generation. You had a different flavor sort of stepping up to say, now we're going to lead things and we're going to do things differently, right? But I think in that process, as Christians, as Black Christians in particular, we kind of got lost in the mix and forgot the importance of economic justice. I don't know how else to put that. You know, I mean,
you got to lay it on the line, brother. That's why we're here. You know, say it like it is.
Because, you know, I grew up, in Roxbury, Boston, Massachusetts, right? And Roxbury has a very rich history, Black history in particular. You know, I grew up about 2 or 3 blocks from where Malcolm X lived on Dale Street in Boston, right? So, you know, I grew up always hearing things about Black history, hearing about, you know, the progress we had made. But I never saw that progress really come into fruition as far as that economic justice momentum, right? And perhaps that was why I had that sort of splinter in my mind my whole life, because I had felt that economic justice was probably one of the most important aspects of our fight, of our struggle for liberation. And yet nobody had really been talking about it. And then when you look back in history at all the major leaders who were either assassinated, exiled, that's why they were cast down, right? I mean, Marcus Garvey was talking about economic justice. Malcolm X, when he went to Africa, was talking about economic justice towards the end of his career. MLK, the Poor People's Campaign. I mean, when you look at all the Panthers and how they were, you know, systematically assassinated, taken out, right, by COINTELPRO, a clandestine operation. I mean, it was all about economic justice. So to me, that indicates economic justice is probably the most potent vehicle for racial liberation. But you know, this is just my attempt to rehash the conversation, right? And sort of, like you said, get us back in that frame of thinking again.
Let me say this to you, Joshua. You are on point.
Thank you,
we don't want to really hear the truth of the matter, but this is the truth.
Yeah.
And we've been fighting for economic justice since we got here.
Yeah.
And every time somebody rises up, they get crushed back down, whether it's through death or whatever it is, right? Bishop Sonia makes a powerful statement here. She says the Black Panthers were circulating the black dollar several times.
There you go.
And at a high rate within its own Black community before it ever exited and touched the mainstream economy. And we got to find a way to go back to that.
Right.
We've got to find a way to get back to that place again. I see you, Reverend Naomi Washington Leaphart. Listen, if you have a question tonight, I want you to write the word question and then pose your question so that we can ask. I still have more questions for the brother. Don't you worry. But if you have questions for him that are directly that have directly to do with this particular conversation, we want you to post your question. Please type the word question before it so it can be seen easily. We want to make sure we don't want to miss anybody tonight. Those of you that are just joining us, we are talking to Dr. Joshua S. Bartholomew. This is a brilliant brother who has put together what I believe is a masterpiece. It's a handbook. It's something that we can use Black theology and the Black Panthers is something that we can use on a consistent basis, right, to help build our communities. To help, it's a way forward, and I think that we need to get with the plan. I see Reverend Edgar Colon here. Colon Rivera is on as well. Anthropologist and economist. He's all the things, and so thank you for being on with us on tonight. Thank you for putting the hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers if you want to get the book. Of course, if you want to win the book, if you want to purchase the book, you will see it pinned in your chat or comment section. Sherman Bartholomew is on as well on YouTube. Says blessings, Dr. Joshua. So listen, chapter 3, a consideration of practice. I think that's where we want to be, right?
Yes.
And I think that we want to talk about the ways in which we can transform this into our own communities, right? Into our churches, right? Into even our places of business. Right. And so please talk to us about that.
Absolutely. So chapter 3, I really put in conversation the intellectual philosophies, the economics philosophies, excuse me, of the Panthers with Black theology in particular, right? And I draw on a conversation that Dr. Cone had with Marxists, right? And let me just preface what I'm about to say with this, right? You know, Marxists, socialists, communists, these words have become buzzwords in our sort of contemporary society, right? Typically when folk talk about economic justice, the assumption is, okay, we're going to think about capitalism and how to make capitalism work for everybody, right? And that's not necessarily the conversation that I'm having in the book, right? I'm critiquing capitalism, but I'm also suggesting that we need an alternative to capitalism, right? And the minute you do that, you're already going to be labeled a Marxist, okay?
Already.
Right. It doesn't mean that you are a Marxist. It doesn't mean that you believe anything Marx said. It just means that you're not having the conversation of sort of in that school of neoclassical, neoliberal thought, right? And so, you know, personally, I don't consider myself a Marxist. I do utilize Marxist thought as a tool of analysis, right? And for that reason, I drew on this conversation that Dr. Cone had with Marxists, where basically he says both sides need to be open to one another, right? Black churches and Marxists need to be open to one another. In sort of rehashing that conversation, I then put a lot of what the Panthers did in practice, right? So their praxis of creating whole communities that were self-directed, right, was the model, was the ethical model that I put in conversation with activist arms of churches, right? And I'm basically saying, you know, what would it look like for Black churches in particular to engage in this type of praxis, right?
Yes.
You know, what would it look like for Black churches to have the priorities of Black communities being whole communities and self-directed communities? Whole in the sense that we own and control all of the resources within our communities, whether it be economically or whatever, right? And self-directed in the sense that we have vision, we have goals, we have an understanding of what it means to participate on a sort of global scale with the rest of the world, right? As human beings, right? Essentially, we're all human beings. So I'm not making an argument that, you know, what's the argument about it's Afro pessimism or Afro need? Like I'm not going in the direction of sort of laying out a plan for raciology or what we do,
right,
so to speak, right? But I am saying, given our current situation, right, we have to acknowledge that, you know, we need to do something. We need to do something, right? And thinking about ourselves as a whole community that can determine our own destinies is the start. That's essentially the start, right? And the role churches can play in that, because Black churches are historically and still today, right, the largest economic institution that we have.
Absolutely.
Right? And it is the only really economic institution that we own and control.
Yes.
You know, so so that's why I still think the conversation is extremely relevant today around what can we still do with what we have today to create conditions that allow us to be whole as communities
And
and
self-directed.
self-directed, right?
And I think that that's very, very important. But Bishop Sonia turns to why I think is not really happening. White Christian colonialism
Mm,
use ethics like turn the other cheek, love of money is the root of all evil, and the eschatology of suffer now to gain a heavenly crown later. And
mm,
that's kept blacks at the
mm,
bottom of the capitalistic totem pole.
mm.
Black
Yeah.
churches got to teach wealth in a healthy way.
Community wealth building. In fact, yes, I agree with that. Yes.
Community wealth building.
Absolutely.
And how do you think we can get to that? What is if you were going to a
Yeah.
church and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
were doing a workshop or a lecture, what are
Mhm.
some of the things that you would say? Because this is
That's a great.
important. This is how we're going to stay alive. It's how our communities are going to stay alive. They're not going to give us anything.
I know. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what is it that we can do for ourselves? So if you
Yeah,
have
I love that question. That is the $1,000,000 question. That is the $1,000,000 question. So in the last chapter of my book, I kind of try to address some of that, right? Where I talk about this ethics of dismantling, right? This
Yes.
ethics of how do we actually put into practice a way to dismantle structures that keep us oppressed while simultaneously building an intentional community that models the kind of liberation we want to feel and see in society, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first step, before we can actually get to any concrete actions, the first step, Bishop, is we kind of all need to agree on the
Yeah.
problem, right? And
Come on.
and that is to say, there's a lot of power differentials within Black communities that are the result of class, right?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and I think that's our biggest challenge right now, right? That we sometimes feel divided along lines of class, and those are the very lines that are essentially keeping us at a position that that we've been in, right?
Yes.
After the enslavement period, right? So, I think before we can really do anything actionable, there needs to be some way for if not all of us, a strong core consensus to have an agreement that this class thing cannot separate us. We need to all look at one another as sisters and brothers in the same struggle. As an individual, I might be good, I might be well off, I might be financially stable, but that doesn't help the whole community if only one of us is financially stable. We
So
have to.
I heard something really. I heard something, and I want you to continue on with this. Somebody said we all in the same boat, and then somebody said no, we're not all in the same boat. We all in the same water. Some of us are in different boats.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
We all in the same water, but we're
Right.
not all
Right.
in the same boat.
Right. Right.
Right.
And it would be great if we could all sort of see the value in at least bringing all the boats together, right? Even if we're not all in one boat, try to get everybody together so that we have some unified front on how we're going to get through this, right? If one of us gets through this and one of us makes it and one of us is financially stable, that doesn't help all of us, right? And so having some commitment to solidarity, I think, is really important in order to realize any actionable steps. When you look at all the movements that have taken place, and Angela Davis says this, very eloquently, all major social change has come from mass movements.
Yes.
And as a collective, I feel like we've lost some of that. We've lost some of our principles in that way. I think we live in a land, in a context of hyper individuality. You got to get yours, I got to get mine, right?
Yep.
And some of us have internalized this, forgetting where we've come from and how we got this far. I still think some of that work needs to continue. It's not that we've made it. It's not that we've made it. It's not that folk fought and died and were assassinated and made martyrs, and now we're good. No. There's still a lot of work to be done. And in fact, this book should remind us that work is left undone. I mean, it's not finished, right? It was cut short, as a matter of fact. And so much of what we were taught after it was cut short was to help us forget that it even happened. So I'm just trying to jog our memories a bit.
I think you're
you
right.
know, and get us to sort of prioritize what I believe is the most important thing for us right now in terms of, getting free.
Yeah. There's a remembering that needs to happen.
Yes, right.
There's a remembering that needs to happen. I think it's very important to say that because we forget a lot.
Yeah.
We forget a lot. We forget a lot about our communities. So we get to a place where we made it because we have the education. We have, we forget that October 15th is when they turn the heat on.
Right.
Come on. If you really grew up in the hood or you grew up, you know what I mean, then you understand that you wasn't getting any more heat until October 15th. Right. And your mama had to, or your daddy and your family, they had to open up the stove. Come on, put a little pot in there with some water or put some water on the sink. I'm sorry, on the stove, and so that the whole apartment could be heated up. Because by the time September came, it was starting to get cold.
Right.
So we're forgetting where we've come from. We're forgetting that we are supposed to be bringing people along with us, right? We're forgetting to empower people. We're forgetting to educate people. We're really forgetting to help people, right? Yeah. And there's a lot of us that have, quote unquote, made it, but we're not really doing what we can for our communities, right? In order to empower us. Yeah. And yes, Bishop Sonia, if one of us is not free, none of us are free. That is correct. That is correct. Okay. Colette has a question for you. Can you speak about how the Panthers directed work with young people, allowed them to draw our community closer, and perhaps help to
I see mediate
class distinctions?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I believe I mentioned earlier, some of the allies for the Panthers were students. Students were crucial during the civil rights and Black power. I mean, you have time, right? You're in a space, you're in a stage of life psychologically where your brain is expanding. You're open to more analytics, right? You're thinking more analytically and critically about life. Many of the Panthers were young people. I mean, 20s, early 20s, late teens. These were young men and women, young sisters and brothers. Yes. And their experience resonates with me, right? Because it was when I got to college and I was around, maybe 17, 18, where I began to be exposed to Black history, right? Those are formative years of your life, right?
Yes.
Where political education can really mean, can really determine what happens with the rest of you. It can really shape the rest of your life, right?
That's right.
And particularly when you're in a sort of scenario where that they were in, where you had two major movements going on, and we kind of see ourselves in a similar state. We had the BLM movement in 2020, and now there were some other things going on in the Middle East right now.
Yes.
And we see what's happening on college campuses, right? So a lot of what was going on back then was really, really significant in terms of how it impacted Black communities.
Yes.
Because those were the same people who then grew up and became the adults, who became the people who, once the movement was over, got jobs and became professors, became lawyers, became doctors, right? And I would be of the mindset that they brought their class consciousness into their professions, right? It's just that perhaps they didn't have a movement or a bigger context to sort of express some of the values that they had learned in the Black Panther Party. You see, I do think that, during the 80s and the 90s, we began to see a shift in sort of Black consciousness after the Black Power movement. But I do think that a lot of what we saw in the 80s and the 90s was a result of that sort of consciousness raising during the Black Power movement. I mean, you see the emergence of rap music, hip hop, right?
Yes.
You see the emergence of you know, a lot of Black cultural icons in the 90s who eventually, you know, I mean, to this day, we still kind of revere as the ones who held it down, right?
Yes.
When nobody else had that space or that time or that airtime on TV.
Right.
So I do think that, you know, a lot of what the Panthers did at that time paved the way for what we saw in the 80s and the 90s in terms of Black cultural expression and consciousness. And you got to imagine that was a hard thing to do, because even during the 80s and 90s, we all know that there was still repression. There was still a sort of force, right, that sought to sort of, you know, quiet down Black conscious voices. I hope that answers the question. I mean, that was a
does, but I'm gonna go further. I'm gonna push it, and then this is
yeah.
probably gonna be my last question. I see you as a visionary.
Thank you.
So not just the author, but as a visionary, right? So I am interested in, if you were a pastor, if you were a bishop,
Yeah.
or any of those titles
Yeah.
in the church, and you had to give a plan for economic justice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's say you pastored in the Bronx because you lived there before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know a little bit about the area. You understand?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know some demographics.
Right.
What would you do? What would your approach be?
That's a you know, my first
one thing. You don't have to lay out the whole plan.
no.
One thing.
Okay. One thing that's a deep question, and I love that question. You know, I would do my best to create some kind of coalition, network, partnership, right, with many institutions and organizations and people who I know understand the issue in a similar way, right? They may not be, you know, anti-capitalist, or, you know, however you want to call it, but they may have an eye towards anti-cap, or they may be interested in economic justice as as an important factor in the conversation of racial justice, right? You know, these are the kinds of people in entities, right, that I would partner with and really try to build relationships, just over time, build relationships and do my best, right, to lay out some plan for Black communities, right? Now, you know, Bishop, I don't want you to think that I have all the answers. I definitely
I know.
don't.
Yeah. I'm clear.
But I genuinely believe that the work that I'm doing is necessary, because if others are doing the same work, then we can all come together as prepared conversation partners who can then bounce ideas off one another and kind of create a mosaic picture of a plan. You see, I think I might have one perspective,
yes,
or a very important one, and I'm sure others from their social locations and experiences also have perspectives.
Absolutely.
And ideas, but we need everybody. We need everybody, because
we need the collective to come together.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's not about, you know, what I think or one person's we all have we should all have a vested interest, because we all have something at stake in creating a vision for how we get free. But I would definitely lay a foundation for building those partnerships and creating the space for everybody to dream together.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for saying yes to come on this show. Thank you for your brilliant mind. Thank you for writing and feeling moved to write and inspired to write Black theology and the Black Panthers. Just a powerful conversation. And what I have gotten, one of the things is that we need folks.
Yes.
We need each other.
Yes.
We need the collective.
Yes.
And it's not just one person, it's everybody.
Yes.
Right. And we can't leave nobody out.
Absolutely not. We need all Black people in this conversation. Trust me. Trust. All of our perspectives matter. And the point of my book, at the end of the day, was to start a conversation.
Absolutely.
I just want to start the conversation, right?
I love it. And if you had to make one final statement before we go to advertisement, tell me the one final statement that you would want to leave for the people to hear. I heard you say create a space for everybody to dream together, but
Yeah.
something that you want the people to hear, one final thing you want the people to hear.
Together we aspire, together we achieve.
Yes. Together we aspire, together we achieve. Not just Joshua by himself, not just Vanessa by herself, together. Together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Powerful, brilliant brother that was with us on tonight on Beyond the Gatekeepers. We appreciate all of you. We want to go to our advertisement and then we're going to go to our giveaway. Stay with us. Thank you for joining us on Beyond the Gatekeepers tonight. We are asking that you do support our broadcast. I told you earlier that this is our 4th year anniversary. We are grateful. This is the last day that we're going to celebrate it. We celebrated it all month. We are standing between at the intersections of culture and religion, and we are grateful for your presence in the ways in which you lift us up. And so we ask that you would give to either our Cash App, which is $TFAM annual, or to our PayPal, which is www.paypal.me/TFAM justice. Some of you have been coming on and have been giving. We are grateful for what you do, for what you give. We do not take it for granted. And we appreciate all the wonderful compliments and things that we get as it relates to this show. We want to keep giving you more and more. We want to make it better. We want to raise the visibility of Beyond the Gatekeepers, and we want to do it with your help. Thank you so much. And we want you to save the date. So August 5th through the 9th, 2024, the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries Leadership Conference will take place in Las Vegas, Nevada. We will be at the Palms Casino Resort in Las Vegas. We want you to register. Our theme is Something Inside So Strong. Our bishop, you all know her, presiding prelate Bishop Yvette A. Flunder, will be there with us the entire week. And we've got some special guests. Bishop William Barber is going to be there. Dr. Pamela Lightsey is going to be there. Dr. Ralph Basui Watkins is going to be there. We have a list of people who are going to be there. Registration is early bird registration. It ends June 19th. It's $200. After that, it's going to be $300. You can go to our website, register at www.radicallyinclusive.org. You can register and you can see hotel registration. All the information is on the site. Please go to the site and be a part of what we believe this movement is called to do at this time, at this day, and in this hour. All right, y'all. Y'all have the opportunity to get in where you fit in tonight. Hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers, all one word. You got to put it in the way you see it on the screen. Put it in the way you see it on the screen. We want you to have the opportunity to win. Remember, I told you, if you don't win, please purchase the book. These are the conversations you want to have within your church ministry, within your groups, whatever it is that you have, even the young adults and young people need to be a part of Black theology and the Black Panthers. I see you all putting in your hashtags now, making the connection. We are grateful for your presence tonight and grateful for all of those that are coming. I want somebody to win. And so, Pastor Sue, let's go. Well, Jessica is a student of Dr. Joshua, and she won tonight, and she stayed in it. Jessica C. Lovell, do me a great big favor. First of all, congratulations to you from Beyond the Gatekeepers. That's number one. Number two, I want you, Jessica, to be able to send us your full name and address so that we can get it to the professor. Yes. And she said, now you have to sign it, Dr. B. So listen, you got to sign the book. We are excited. Thank you so much for your contribution to make us a better place, make us a better world. And we're grateful for you, Dr. Joshua. I know that we'll be talking to you again.
Yes, thank you, Bishop, so much for this opportunity. You are doing amazing work. And I pray that God continues to bless you and to bless this space beyond the gatekeepers. This was truly incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Beyond the Gatekeepers. Have a wonderful evening. God bless and good night.